demonstration of how parliamentarians can come together and work on a cross-party basis to secure the basic right of having our voices heard in a democratic system. We've met this morning. Jeremy Corbyn, he's trapped in other meetings at the moment, but Jeremy Corbyn convened a meeting this morning of the opposition party leaders, and I think it was it's extremely positive and constructive meeting where we recognised, all of us recognised our responsibilities to prevent a no deal. One of the issues that we have to address, though, is to recognise, exactly as Luciana and Stephen has said, we're faced with a Prime Minister who, well, who recklessly is seeking to take us over the cliff of a no deal and all the consequences that has for people's jobs, their livelihoods, their standard of living, but also is willing to use a mechanism of proroguing Parliament to deny MPs their democratic rights to represent their constituents and determine the business of Parliament and determine the future direction of this policy. So we're here today to demonstrate right the way across the opposition parties and others that we will not tolerate such a manoeuvre, a reckless manoeuvre in itself. Yesterday, Shami Chakrabarti, as the Shadow Attorney General, published legal advice that many of you will have seen, which challenges the lawfulness of the attempt by the Prime Minister to prorogue Parliament. And I'm sure there'll be others who are looking at the legal aspects of that sort of dangerous tactic. Our view is straightforwardly is that Parliament should decide this matter. It should have the right to meet, and that's why many of us did support the recall of Parliament, again, initiative by Stephen and Luciana and others and all those others involved in this. Parliament should have the right to meet. It should ensure that there's proper debate of the issue, and then Parliament should eventually decide. We're hoping by the work that we're doing together to ensure that we can achieve the most appropriate parliamentary mechanism to prevent a no deal and to ensure that, yes, the democratic wishes, we believe, of Parliament itself should be adhered to. I just give this warning to Boris Johnson. You know, Prime Ministers come and Prime Ministers go. But actually, I don't think we've ever seen a Prime Minister like this who has the potential to threaten the very nature of our democracy. And who has the potential to threaten the very nature I just warn him that of our democracy. We will not stand aside and let that happen. And exactly as the declaration says, who has the potential to threaten the very nature I just warn him that our democracy. We will not stand aside and let that happen. And exactly as the declaration says, who has the potential to threaten the very nature I just warn him that our democracy. We will not stand aside and let that happen. And exactly as the declaration says, who has the potential to threaten the very nature I just warn him that our democracy. We will not stand aside and let that happen. And exactly as the declaration says, who has the potential to threaten the very nature. I just warn him that our democracy. We will not stand aside and let that happen.
That we are simply not going to stand back and allow Boris Johnson, without a mandate, in an undemocratic manner, drive the United Kingdom off the cliff edge to do enormous damage to our communities. When we know that there is no such thing as a good Brexit, when we know that a no-deal Brexit will have catastrophic consequences for our economy, for our communities. And you know, there is that sense of responsibility that we all have. We have to be honest with the people of the United Kingdom, that we face an enormous challenge, that the default position is that we leave the European Union on a no-deal basis at the end of October. And I have to say to you, as colleagues and as friends, I'm proud of what happened this morning, because all of us as opposition parties laid our differences at the door, because we recognise the scale of the challenge that collectively that we face. And woe betide anyone that doesn't work in a collective fashion, because we face what is a significant challenge over the course of the next few weeks. What we have in the government of the UK is an administration that is prepared to stop at nothing to take us out of the European Union without a mandate, with a Prime Minister that was put in place by Conservative members of Parliament. A Conservative government that's been taken over by a clique, that is driven by ideology, that is simply not prepared to accept the damaging consequences of what Brexit is going to do. They are prepared to shut down Parliament. They are prepared to take away the rights of parliamentarians. We must stand together. We are in for the fight of our lives. And that unity that we have in the opposition parties, and yes, with colleagues on the Conservative benches as well, that recognises what is going on, gives us the opportunity to stop Boris Johnson in his tracks. You know, when you consider that the government's own analysis indicates that a no-deal Brexit would have an impact on the economy that's 4 times the scale of the impact of the financial crisis, then that is sobering. When the government has admitted that it's going to imperil the supply of food and medicines, and indeed in the document that was released through the Sunday Times last week, that hundreds of thousands of people run the risk of having difficulties with their water supply. Friends, this is a government that is threatening the security of our citizens. We should be under no illusion of the scale of the challenge that we face. Working together, we can stop this. We can find a safe landing place. Working together, we will win, and we will get to a situation that all of us as MPs protect the economic, the social and the cultural interests of our citizens. And we will simply not allow Boris Johnson to take away our democratic rights. Thank you.
Thank you, first of all, to Luciana and to Stephen for coordinating this declaration and bringing us together today here in this historic building. And thank you to all of the members of Parliament who have come here from all corners of Britain to make the point clearly that Parliament will not stand by while the Prime Minister sends our country into a catastrophic no-deal Brexit and takes away the rights of people to have their voices heard. We know that the no deal that the government is heading towards is in itself anti-democratic. There is no mandate in our country for a no-deal Brexit. It was not on offer in 2016. And to make it even worse, the Prime Minister now threatens to silence Parliament, the place where people have their voices heard. And the job that we all do to represent our constituents is important to give voice to them. To my constituent, a doctor who came to my advice surgery because he was worried about the government's no-deal planning for his area of nuclear medicine and what that would mean for the number of cancer screening and treatments that could be provided. For the people who are concerned, having looked at the government's own analysis of what no deal means, that they are concerned about shortages of food in the supermarkets, they're concerned about whether they can get their prescriptions filled. And although we are here from Scotland, England and Wales today, it is also important that the people in Northern Ireland have a voice. And I think about my visit just a fortnight ago, listening to a young woman at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland talking to me about how she remembered her sisters telling her that when they went to school, their school bags had to be searched at the checkpoints. She grew up in a Northern Ireland that didn't have that because she grew up in a climate of peace. But the fear in that community, and in particular in those border communities, is palpable. They aren't making it up. They are genuinely worried about what might happen particularly if we crash out without a deal. And so it is more important than ever that those voices from right across the United Kingdom, our brilliant, strong, United Kingdom together, are heard and heard loudly. And we collectively will not stand by. We will make sure we give voice to the people. Thank you.
And I, too, very much like to extend my thanks to Stephen and to Luciana for this event today. And, of course, we are in Church House, and the benches of the House of Commons stand empty. They are effectively little more than a tourist attraction at present, and that could well be a glimpse of the future of how effective they might be, the reality of our politics. Now, Leave campaigners in 2016, they appealed to the hearts of voters by arguing that EU membership ran contrary to the British constitutional tradition of parliamentary sovereignty. Our current Prime Minister was among those who argued that the authority of Parliament can only be restored if the UK left the European Union, despite the endless contradictions of his own arguments. And of course, many of us had already seen through the duplicity of his arguments 3 years ago, as European Union membership never reduced sovereignty, but rather allowed us to pool sovereignty in areas which best serve the people that we represent. However, few of us imagined that that very same man who argued that Brexit would somehow give Parliament more authority would 3 years later be actively seeking to close it down in order to force through the most destructive policy in recent history. Now, as a party, Plaid Cymru do not see the House of Commons as our natural permanent home. We have dedicated our energies towards creating our own national parliament, more modern, more inclusive, more representative than Westminster, a parliament that can truly empower the people it represents. But we also have a duty to the people of Wales to put public interest before party interest in this time and in this place. And in this instance, that means protecting representative democracy against an attempted, undemocratic, executive elite coup d'etat. And I see no exaggeration in calling it out for what it is. Now, faced with what could be the most serious abuse of power on parliamentary democracy in living memory, we must do everything we can to stop the crash-out scenario that will happen if we don't stop Article 50 from being concluded on November the 1st. For that, we need to put the conventions of politics as we are used to, we need to put them to one side. We need to put egos and petty rivalries to one side. This is not politics as usual. We are dealing with the greatest emergency of all our political careers. More than that, the greatest emergency of the communities which we represent. We need a new politics to respond to that sort of urgency.